On this day, the 13th of December 1975, the North Vietnamese launch what is later to be called their spring offensive against South Vietnam. Now, called the spring offensive because most of this conflict, most of this campaign was in late winter and early spring, although Vietnam really just has a wet season and a dry season, so it's more for people further north who have seasons that we call it the spring offensive. Vietnam War had been going on for quite a while. North and South had been divided since 1955, and the Vietnam War was winding down, or had wound down. The Americans had withdrawn most of their troops, and the appetite in the United States for supporting the South against the North had dried up. The North realized this, and they were intent on conquering the South. In many ways, the end of South Vietnam was not set in stone. South Vietnam at that time had the largest GDP of any country in Southeast Asia. It had a very fine army. They were experienced, they were very well trained, they had some of the best material, uniforms, weapons, tanks, helicopters, you name it, they were on the cutting edge. South Vietnam had not only the largest GDP, not just because of the Americans spending money because of the war, but their economy was booming. Saigon was a center of business in Southeast Asia, and South Vietnam in 1974 did not really look like it was going to collapse. But in 1975, 30th of April, it was gone. So, on the 30th of December 1974, the North Vietnamese begin their campaign. The North Vietnamese did not believe that it would be this easy to take down the South. The whole campaign was meant to prepare the North for the proper campaign to take Saigon in 1976. That was their aim. Also, many of their forces were coming over the border into South Vietnam from Cambodia, where they and the Khmer Rouge were cooperating. Before the fall of Saigon, we had the fall of Phnom Penh, and all the people marching out into the killing fields. So this ended up being quite a dark period for the people of Southeast Asia. But getting back to the spring offensive, the Vietnamese launched their attack from Cambodia into Vietnam. Again, they weren't expecting a great easy walkover. They thought they would have to fight hard. But they won quite easily. In Binh Phuoc province, I think it's called, Binhphuoc. I can't pronounce Vietnamese, so I'm probably wrong. But this was quite close to Saigon, and they managed to take that and beat the South Vietnamese army. In response, the South Vietnamese decided to abandon the Central Highlands because they couldn't secure it. There were too many Viet Cong in that area. This was a debacle. It led to massive flows of refugees pouring out of the highlands towards the coast. They had the army retreating with all of these refugees. Then after this, there was the Battle for Da Nang, which was another disaster, and people were trying to get out of there, and people went on ships and planes, and eventually Da Nang fell, and bit by bit the cities started to fall. So, April, 30th of April, the end of April. So this conflict, this campaign, was going to last less than 6 months. And it was a stunning collapse. Even more stunning than the recent Afghan collapse. Because at least South Vietnam had a state, had an army, had institutions which were quite weak, obviously. But Afghanistan never had an economy like South Vietnam. Even now, South Vietnam is the wealthiest part of Vietnam, always has been. So it was a complete rout. And what happened was the Americans abandoned South Vietnam as well. Nixon had promised that if the North Vietnamese attacked, that the United States would support South Vietnam with its air power. Ford didn't. He did try to get some aid sent to them, but Congress refused it. If the Americans had put their air power at the service of the South, it's quite possible that South Vietnam could have pushed North Vietnam back. And this was 1974 going into 1975. It wasn't very long until the end of communism. We're talking about 10 years before the cracks start appearing. 14 years before it completely falls apart. If they had managed to survive this assault and get into the Jimmy Carter era, and then maybe limp towards the Reagan era, I don't think Reagan would have abandoned South Vietnam that way. And by the time that Reagan left, communism was over. So it's interesting to think what could have happened. And it's a bit sad to see what happened. Like, millions of people in South Vietnam fled. And some of them are going back now because Vietnam has changed. It's no longer the communist state that it once was, although it's still run by a communist party. But perhaps it's better that they did win. Perhaps North Vietnam would have just become like another North Korea that's just reliant on China. Perhaps a united Vietnam is better to have. Questions that we can think of and ponder over. But what cannot be denied is that on the 13th of December 1974, the North Vietnamese launched their spring offensive, which led, in 5 months, to the collapse of the South Vietnamese state. Like these videos, come back tomorrow for more. Comment, subscribe, and like.